Welcome back for my Witchtober series. So today is day 15. Can you believe we're pretty much like halfway through the month? It feels like it just started. So today I wanted to talk about my biggest struggles that I have dealt with and constantly bother me the most out of everything in the broad sense of the witchcraft community. So the first one is one that literally in the past 24 hours, I have noticed it at least 4 different times. And it again proves my point of why I struggle so much with the supposed community, and that's the money side of it. There is such a, block that we have to deal with for our community, for our spirituality. It comes with a price tag, and it's so stupid, and I hate it. But it's true, and there are plenty of people who will charge you oogles amounts of money who beg to differ, but they're wrong. So the thing is, you can't say that our religion is a free religion if you include community. Our community spaces have a price tag. When you're Christian, I've known several Christians, you can go and talk to your religious leaders in your community and you don't have to pay them money to talk to them. For spiritual things in particular, you don't have to pay them. Like if you're going through a crisis and you're like, oh my God, I need someone to help. Like I don't think I've ever heard of a bishop or a pastor or a priest or whatever. I don't think any of them are like, well, you gotta pay me $75 and then I'll talk to Jesus for you. Like I don't think they're gonna do that. They're gonna just do their job. They're going to help. And we don't have that. There is such a push in the community, and it's a fine line, but also it's still there of, well, I did all of this training and I've had all of this experience, therefore you should pay me. Sure, but also we don't have a choice if you don't have that kind of money. Like you have to do it yourself, therefore not community. And it's not like it's cheap either. Readings are typically a minimum of about $30, up to hundreds. And just a session with somebody to sit down for spiritual counseling, for a reading, for a healing, whatever. In times of crisis, when you're busy with like the mental and emotional load that you're dealing with, to then have to go fork out a bunch of money to have your community there to support you, it gives me the ick. And anytime you look at communities and you look at the spaces that are created, it's money. You have to pay to go to their workshops, take their classes, go to like the regular meetups and stuff. You have to pay money. If you want to go to a religious service, guess what? You gotta pay. And don't circumvent that with the whole, but it's just based off of donations or of food donations. Food costs money. If a donation is required or heavily required, but not actually, it's still required. If you're going to shame people if they cannot afford to bring something to your thing, yeah, it's not free anymore, is it? It's we'll let it slide attitude. It's a lot of money involved. And like I'm so tired of so many of the people that I want to go and like I want to go to these events and I want to go to these things. I really like these people, but then suddenly they really start to push money. It bothers me immensely. Like, oh, look at my new course, look at my new retreat, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know that's just money in their hands. I hate it. I hate it so much. Like, I don't care as much about books. I mean, I love books, but like, it's a one-time purchase and then you're done. And then you have that book forever. And like, a lot of times authors are more willing to finagle things for people. Like myself, I'm planning to have my audiobook for free for a little bit of time at the end of the year as a way to give back to my community for those who cannot afford it. And it's not like my books are horribly expensive. There are people who charge like $200 for a book. Like it is expensive, not necessarily in the witchcraft community, but in other communities, people will literally charge you $200 for their books. So like I hate it. I am so tired of everywhere I look, and in times of crisis, you know, when you're dealing with things and you'd really like to have a community space, it is blocked, it is gatekept by money. You have to pay money to have access to these things, and like it sucks. And that is just a thing you have to accept in the pagan and witch communities. That's just our thing. You have to pay money to show up. The next biggest struggle that I deal with is the toxic research. And that's the best way I could describe it. It's the academic types that are so obsessed with, and it's really big in the Norse community in particular, but this thing of like, you gotta prove your point because somebody else wrote it down years ago. And that your experience that you've already had is not valid because it might not completely line up with somebody who wrote it down who probably didn't believe it hundreds of years ago. That one gets really old. And you have these people that like, no matter your experience, you have to have like your research notes ready and your sources organized and prepared to go into conversation with these people. And it sucks. It sucks so much. Like, we have so many different sources and so much of it is like iffy on a good day anyways, because it wasn't written down by the people who believed the stuff. Yet we hold these Christian translations on such a pedestal compared to the modern practitioners. It's awful. I notice it a lot in some writings, and again, really the Norse community in particular. It's old. My God, you have to constantly reference which section of Snorri Sturluson's section of this random Edda that he translated and wrote down and whatever. Like, you have to know the exact one and back it up with, well, this translation says it this way, but this one says it this way, and blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Like, it gets old. And again, I don't see that a whole lot in other religions. And I mean, I'm sure it is kind of, but I feel like maybe it's more broken up to the different branches of like Christianity and stuff, of like how to interpret things. But yeah, it gets old really fast, and it makes it a struggle to want to have a community when you feel like you can't talk unless you have like a freaking PhD in the topic and you are prepared to constantly go into an actual debate with somebody to prove that Freya actually really likes when you give her lilies instead of roses. You know, something stupid like that, yet they will go to war over that one. Number 3, one of my really big struggles in witchcraft, and this has been something I've struggled with for years, and that is the overly sexual things of witchcraft. I know I'm gonna come across as a prude, but like, it's so stupid. I hate it. Like, we are such a group, a religion that is infiltrated with overly obsessed with sex. Everywhere. We have an entire like celebration that people have just made it become the holiday of sex, and that's it. And it's awful. And it just, everything has to come back to 2 major organs for each of the genders, right? You either, everything that is vaguely shaped as a stick obviously represents a dick, and anything that is like a cup-ish is a uterus. And everything in our religion comes back to sexuality, our ability to reproduce, and that's it. And it gets so old. And like, you know that like, for me, who I'm not very comfortable with that, when I go to certain groups over the years, like, I know that I have to judge very harshly based off of Beltane, because how you handle Beltane is how you're going to handle everything else. If it's overly sexual, if it's very inappropriate, very immature, that's the tone of the group. And I don't like it. I don't like to have to deal with overt sex all the time. We get it enough in our media, in books, in movies, TV, ads, everywhere. It's always sex. Why does it have to also be in witchcraft all the time? If that's your thing, cool, but not everyone needs that all the time. And it is just obnoxious, and I don't like it. And it's one of the main reasons that I don't like witchcraft, because you have to sort through that constantly to get to anything worthwhile, because again, it gets lumped into the 2 categories. Is it a dick energy or is it a vagina energy? And that's it. That's all you got. And it gets really old. Next is that our way is the only way. And it kind of relates back to the research one, but there's a lot of people that you go to any kind of group, and it doesn't even matter if it's an official group, if it's a coven, a grove, whatever, even just like shops and things. Like, people are so set that their way is the proper way, and it is awful because you can't just have nuance anymore. There's so many people that in our community it has to be this way because I said it's this way. Or again, with research of things that everyone's like, oh my God, but it's gonna be this way. It gets old, and that it's the only way that you can do something. And I don't know, I've noticed it a lot in more in-person situations than online or in books. That's one of the reasons I like books more than the local community, because it's not really a community. We also have a lot of witch wars. I don't know if they're still going on. I feel like they probably are, but it doesn't feel like a community. You have to just agree exactly to everything their leaders say, and it does kind of lead to more cultish vibes. But like, it's just an expected that you have to believe everything they do, and a lot of like, I get tired of it. I'm so tired. Like, even if you are just hanging out with people, it's expected that you would just, like, you just kind of accept that whoever is the louder, stronger voice is going to be the one that's right, and you just kind of have to follow along with it. And, you know, a lot of it also comes down to, like, how long you've been practicing. I know when I was a wee witch that I didn't feel like I was allowed to have a voice until I was at least, like, 9 years in. And now that I'm 15 years in, it's like, yeah. But also, like, it still holds. Newer witches just don't feel like they have that kind of... Maybe now they do with, like, social media being bigger. But back in my day, that was not a thing. And it sucks when you're like, oh. And, like, you get such a dismissive attitude if you don't agree with them, and it sucks. And the last one is one that really bothers me. I think the most out of them all, out of all of the things that I really struggle with in witchcraft and in our community, it's the pseudoscience. I don't know why we have attracted the whack belief systems, but we have. Somehow, wanting to honor the old gods and wanting to believe that we can have a little bit of influence over our lives, our luck, our things, power of the mind actually does a lot. Somehow, we tend to attract the people that also really go off the deep end. These are the people that believe in, like, adrenal fatigue and, like, you gotta drink this basically salt juice water, and that you have toxic mold, but also you're totally fine and actually you're just living at home doing your thing, because, you know, why would we? Science. And that you need, like, coffee enemas. And, like, there's a lot of pseudoscience. There's a lot of mistrust in modern science and modern medicine. There's a lot of misinformation spread. One in particular that you see all the time, especially for women and people who have periods, is that you obviously are poisoning your body and you're ruining your magic because you dare to take birth control of any kind, and you are limiting your body's, like, natural magic. You are poisoning yourself, you're ingesting horrible chemicals, and, like, that is awful. And again, I always come back to the same argument of, like, would you tell that to a type 1 diabetic or somebody who has a heart condition and they have to take, like, various medications to control their heart so that they don't, like, literally die? Like, would you tell them that? More likely than not, no. But there are extremists who would, and they exist in our community. And it is a more broad sense, it's not necessarily just witchcraft, but I have noticed it quite a bit in witchcraft, specifically for birth control. But, like, there's so much pseudoscience, it sucks. Like, the whack beliefs that you're like, nobody would believe this, right? And then they do, and you're like, oh God. Like, if any witch tells you to go to a naturopath instead of a regular doctor, that's red flag. Okay, go to your normal doctor. A naturopath doesn't have the training. And sure, it's nice to have the idea of a holistic, all areas of your life put together. Get the people in each profession of your life to help you with that. For instance, you should probably see a therapist for your mental health, your regular doctor, and then probably specialists for what's going on with your physical situation, and then pay the money to find out for your spiritual needs from somebody in the community, because again, that one really bothers me a lot. So anyways, those are my biggest issues that I have with the community as being a witch. I struggle with all of these constantly. Like, it is never ending with me that I hates it. I hates it so much. And I know there's always going to be exceptions to every single one of these, but this has been my experience. So I would love to know what your biggest struggles have been as a witch. If any of these have bothered you like they bother me, because this is bigger than my spells flopping. This is bigger than, you know, trying to figure out which deity to work with or writing up spells or, you know, anything like that. These are the actual struggles that I have as a witch. So I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons. If you would like to support me and get access to exclusive content, it's patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I post every single day. And until next time, blessed be.